I'd like to call the Monday, September 17, 2018 Oakwood City Council meeting to order. Would you please rise and join me with the pledge to the flag?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May I have a roll call, please, Lori?
Mayor Duncan?
Here.
Vice Mayor Byington?
Here.
Mr. Stevens?
Here.
Mrs. Hilton?
Here.
Mr. Epley?
Here.
And I have a report on the minutes of our August 6 regular session, work session, and executive session, and our August 20 work session and executive session. Mrs. Hilton.
Yes, Your Honor, I've reviewed the minutes from all 5 of those meetings, and I found them to be correct and complete, and therefore I move that they be adopted as written.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. So ordered. Under status reports, I have a proclamation to recognize this week as Constitution Week. Whereas September 17, 2018 marks the 231st anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention. And whereas it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition to this magnificent document and its memorable anniversary, and to the patriotic celebrations which will commemorate the occasion. Whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America, designating September 17 through September 23 as Constitution Week. Therefore, under the power vested in me, I, William D. Duncan, Mayor of the City of Oakwood, hereby proclaim the week of September 17 through September 23 as Constitution Week, and ask our citizens to reaffirm the ideals of the framers of the Constitution that they had in 1787 by vigilantly protecting the freedoms guaranteed to us through this guardian of our liberties, remembering that lost rights may never be regained. Thank you for that. That was the end of our status reports. This is the visitor section of our meeting. If anyone is here that wishes to address council on any matter that you feel we should be aware of, this would be your time to come down to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Do we have any visitors that wish to address us? Seeing none, we will then close the visitors portion, and we will go immediately to legislation, and Vice Mayor Byington has a resolution.
Yes, Your Honor, this is a resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor. Each tax year, the Montgomery County Budget Commission is required to certify its determination of the millage rates and amounts the city will receive from its existing property tax levies. For 2018-19, the Budget Commission has determined that Oakwood will receive $1,138,065 from inside millage and $462,568 from its outside millage tax levies. These figures are consistent with the city's projections, although they do not include money from the city's existing 3.7 mil levy because that levy expires this year and will be presented to the voters for renewal at our November elections. With that, this is an annual resolution to accept the county's determination, and I move that council adopt it this evening.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any other questions or comments for Vice Mayor Byington? Hearing none, Lori, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Duncan?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Byington?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mrs. Hilton?
Yes.
Mr. Epley?
Yes.
That concludes our legislation this evening. We have a staff report for our Public Works Department. I think Mr. Klops will be giving that report.
Your Honor and Council, I think this could have broken the record on being the shortest meeting, if not for my department.
Not for you.
That's what I was thinking.
It's not for you.
Okay. My record is safe.
I'll start with that. I want to just talk to you for a few minutes tonight about some of the projects and activities down at our Public Works Center. And I'll just start out by saying, as I did last time, that, you know, we have a wonderful staff down there at the worker level and at the leadership level, and our foreman and Gary Dersh, who runs our water system. So really a top shelf department. Let me start with a couple comments about refuse operations. As you know, the single largest pieces of equipment in our city inventory, except for fire trucks and the sewer Vector truck, are the refuse packers. And the new ones now, you know, the type that we use with the double bed hoppers, they cost about $250,000, maybe pushing $300,000, depending on what type of truck you would buy. But we found a neat way of really extending the life of these packers. And basically, what we found is that when you look at the entire unit, you can break it up into two parts: the cab and chassis part and the hopper, and the conveyor and the hydraulic system and everything, basically the back part. If you look at the truck, as we all see them running up and down the streets, you know, the blue part is the cab and chassis, the yellow part is basically the rest of it, the hopper part. And what we found over the years is that yellow part is what wears out. And the rest of it, the cab and chassis part, doesn't wear out nearly as quickly as the hopper part. And that's because Oakwood is so small, and the number of miles that we put on the cab and chassis is just relatively minor. And in fact, you know, running from Oakwood down to the county transfer station where we dump, that's a short trip as well. So it's interesting to look at these units in this manner. And what we have found is that we can basically get 2 cycles of life out of the cab and chassis by replacing the back hopper unit. And because we have the skill set in-house and the maintenance shop that accommodates that significant major undertaking to do that work, why we can do it in a very cost-effective manner. And of late, we've been able to find one about a year and a half ago, a used packer body that was in an environment where it was not rusting and, you know, was really in good shape, and it fit the truck that we needed it for. And we just found a second one to deal with a second truck of ours. So basically, we're spending, you know, $50,000 or $60,000 to get an extra probably 10 years of life out of a refuse packer that we otherwise would have just completely replaced. And so that's a really good news story. And again, if we had to ship the whole thing out and have a private shop do the work, I think the economics of it would be a little bit tougher to justify because there is a lot of labor involved. But because we can do it in-house with our 2 mechanics, it really works for us. So I'll just add that there are 2 other pieces of equipment where we have a similar situation. One is with the street sweeper. Again, you basically have a cab and chassis truck system, and then you have the conveyor and the sweeper and then the hopper that all the debris goes into. Why we're finding that rusts out and wears out much quicker than the rest of the unit. And as I've reported to the Budget Committee, earlier this year we found a used street sweeper down in Texas in an environment where obviously there's no rust, no salt, and that sort of thing. And for $4,000, we purchased it and had it shipped up here. The entire street sweeper. We took it apart, and we're just now finishing up putting that old hopper, which is in great shape, on top of our cab and chassis to renew the street sweeper. And the third unit we have, or type of equipment, is the Vector truck that I mentioned earlier. You know, it too has a big cab and chassis, and then this big hopper and the vacuum, system that feeds it. So basically, those 3 types of equipment lend itself well to this kind of maintenance procedure that we're engaged in. That's saving our taxpayers a lot of money. Tree trimming, I'll just mention briefly because this is an ongoing project in our city. We basically have the community broken down into 10 parts, and so 10 out of the 12 months during the year, we have our bucket truck and 2 Oakwood Public Works employees, going up and down streets in these various areas, trimming our trees. And it's ongoing, as you know. I mean, we, through Carol's Johnny Appleseed project, we plant 70 or 80 new trees like clockwork every year in the public right-of-way. And that, in addition to all the trees that private citizens put in on their own, many of which are in the right-of-way, why our tree inventory is the same as it was 20, 30 years ago. And I think 20 years from now, it'll be the same as it is now. So there's a lot of maintenance involved there, and frankly, it's a lot of time and investment on the city's part to keep, the streets clear of branches and that sort of thing. So that's happens in Public Works. Our street maintenance program, continues. This year we invested about $210,000 in the asphalt mill and overlay project. Deep Hollow Road, Hadley Avenue, Wiltshire, and Acorn are all renewed, and that project went very well. We also are investing almost $300,000 in concrete work. A lot of it's sidewalk, curb, driveway apron in the southeast quadrant of the city, and that work will be done the next few weeks. It's been going very well this year. And then a chunk of money will be used for concrete street repair, which at this point, given that we're heading into fall, will probably be pushed to next spring, and that'll be on Ridgeway Road, some significant repairs there. Schroeder Road, just an update on that, continues to function as designed and properly, and we have received no complaints at all. There are no backups. There are really, frankly, no issues out there other than a positive change for our community. And the trees in 1 year have really grown. If you look at them from what they were when we planted them, I guess only about 10 months ago, they're doing very well. And the last comment on streets, this is kind of a long-range thing. We just are working through the process now of programming Far Hills Avenue for a resurfacing. And this is way out in 2024, but we have to get it in the pipeline to get the federal funding through ODOT and MVRPC. And the funding model is 80-20, so because it's a state route, why 80% of the cost, which is estimated about $1.1 million, 80% of that would be paid by the feds, and Oakwood would pay about $200,000 local here for that. And that would be a complete resurfacing from one end of Oakwood to the other. In our water production, our two primary water reports are on the website. That's the annual water production report that Gary Dersch prepares, and then the Consumer Confidence Report, CCR, which is required by the US EPA. And so if citizens interested in, learning more about our 8 production wells, our 3 water plants, and all the testing we do to meet all the EPA requirements, they can find those 2 reports online. I can tell you that we continue to operate our water system in compliance with all the regulations. And also we have a well field protection program, which was started way back in the early 90s, and there are 4 different components to it, and we regularly update different parts of that as needed. As you know, Oakwood is very stable. We have almost no new development. The recharge area for our wells is essentially the northern half of Oakwood, described very kind of roughly, and 95 or more % of that land area, as you know, is residential, most of which is single-family residential. So the risk of any contamination from something spilled on the ground that would permeate through the sands and gravels and get into the aquifer is very, very minor, comparatively. If we had industrial parks or large manufacturing facilities within that recharge area, then like a lot of communities do or public water systems do, we'd have a little bit more to be concerned about. But even though we have a very safe kind of land use above our aquifer, we still have the well field protection program, and we update it from time to time. On our water distribution sewer system, we do ongoing maintenance on that. With the Vectron project, the primary work that was done on East Drive, there were a number of water services that leaked, and this is a function of the large construction equipment and the deep trenches that were built. Some of the lines were literally dug through, others just from the disturbance of the ground developed a leak. You know, those homes in that area were probably built in the 30s and the 40s for the most part. And most of the water service lines are the old pipe. So you disturb the ground a little bit and leaks develop. Whenever we run into those leaks, we take out the existing pipe and put in a copper pipe. And then sometimes the homeowner would replace the line from the shut-off valve to their house at the same time that we do it. Sometimes they don't, but that's up to the individual homeowner. We recently repainted all of our fire hydrants. We do that every couple years, and so that's an important task. And we, as you know, we do flow test and repair any hydrants that might need to be repaired each spring, typically in April into early May. So the hydrants are well maintained. We about 2 months ago completed a leak detection survey where we brought in an outside contractor. It was about, I think, roughly $4,000 for the work, but they basically surveyed the entire Oakwood public water system. They have instruments where they can just connect on to fire hydrants, and they listen for the sound of leaking water, and then they have ways of determining exactly where that sound is coming from. I'm literally to the nearest foot or so. So they'll hear a little bit of noise, and then they trace it down, and they can basically put an X on the pavement where we have a leak. And we were just now finishing up, digging up and repairing the leaks that were found. And there weren't any large leaks, but there were a number of small ones. And we made the repairs, so it's a good investment. We do it every few years. And for a system that was put in, upwards of 100 years ago in large parts of Oakwood, it's important to do that on a regular basis. And I'll conclude my comments with, I mentioned the shop that we have at Public Works, and I was thinking earlier today that it was about 20 years ago that City Council, a citizen committee, and staff worked on the designs, the detailed designs for the new Public Works yard. We moved in the spring of 2000, but it was about 1998 when the real detailed design started to happen, and the construction started in 1999. But one of the important components was the shop. And what does that shop need to look like? What features do we need to have in that shop? And my good friend, John Chain, who was our service director at the time, who happened to retire just a few months after we moved in to the new building, our new facility. He was here for 25 years, from the mid-'70s to 2000, and had a number of skills that brought him in here as the water operator initially, and then got him promoted to service director fairly early in his career. One of his strongest skills was in the shop. He understood trucks and equipment, and he is very mechanically inclined, and he gets, I think, the most credit for this shop that we built, which, as I reflect back now, almost 20 years later, has met all of our needs. I mean, it's just really been a perfect type of mechanic shop for all the variety and types of equipment and vehicles that we maintain here. So what we're able to do by taking these huge hoppers off a big piece of equipment, we can do that because we have the lifting devices there and the other equipment needed to do that safely. So I could say a little more about that, the facility down there, but I'll kind of leave it at that. Bottom line is it's served us well for now 18 years, and we've just had to do some routine maintenance here and there to kind of keep that whole Public Works yard going. So it's a quick update.
Okay. Any questions for our Public Works Director?
I have a question. Sure. Norb, I've read different things about recycling and how one can taint a whole batch of stuff, you're sending out by screwing up by putting something wrong in it. I mean, do we have any guidelines, or like, what if I accidentally put a straw in? Does that make all of my wonderful cans not go the right place, or?
No. Here locally, everything that is commingled, either that we pick up at the household via the scooter or that we pick up at the dog park in that dumpster, it all goes down to Rumpke
Okay.
downtown. And it's literally dumped on their dumping floor, and they then sort through it and process it. So, you know, we don't do anything here locally to identify a batch or a load that needs to go to the transfer station in Moraine to go to a landfill versus going to Rumpke. Everything we pick up goes to Rumpke,
Okay.
and then they deal with it there.
So err on the side of over-inclusion? If I've got a
Well,
can that had one bean in it, or?
Ms. Hilton, that used to be the recommendation.
That's what I thought,
Used to
okay.
be it, and across the board, if you're not sure, just throw it in there.
Yeah.
And, it'll get sorted out. But that has now changed.
Yeah.
Because, in large part, China, as you've all read, I know, is no longer accepting the vast majority of the used plastic, and they were the single largest importer of used plastic around the world, and most of their plastic, frankly, came from the United States. So what does that mean? It means there's a whole lot of recyclable material piling up around the country, and American companies up to this point, recyclers, are not able to efficiently, and for a profit, deal with the type of variety and, clean, dirty, mix and contamination sort of things that previously we were able to deal with. So the new guidance from Montgomery County and beyond is to do just the opposite. If in doubt, throw it in.
Okay.
In the trash. The fear is that if too much of the loads, for instance, for us that go to Rumpke, have too much of the wrong kind of stuff in there, then Rumpke may either continue to raise the price they charge to receive this stuff, which went from $8 to $15 to now $20 a ton, or they may get out of the business altogether, and they're the only game in town. We used to have Rumpke and Waste Management, and Waste Management closed their facility in Fairborn, so we really just have Rumpke here in the Dayton area. If we had to ship all this commingled recyclable material to Cincinnati or Indianapolis or Columbus, there's all that transportation cost involved. So, long-winded answer, but the new guidance is if you're not really sure, it's better just to throw it in the trash.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Ideally, though, education is the key.
Yeah.
Which way it goes, one or the
Right.
other.
Okay, thanks.
And we do have some guidance about this issue on our website, is my understanding.
We do, and in fact, the whole refuse handbook is in there, but there's also a link on our website to take you to Rumpke, to their website, where you can read exactly what their rules and regulations are. And they don't change a lot, but they do from time to time change a little bit. And so that's the way to get the latest detail.
All right. Anything else for her? All right. Well, then, thank you, and as you make your way back to the dais, we will allow you to now give your city manager report.
So, Your Honor, the only additional item I want to comment on is the veteran ID card. And you'll remember at our July council meeting, our county recorder, Brandon McLean, came and spoke to you and mentioned two new programs that he was starting. One is the veteran ID card, and one had to do with title fraud matters. And there's a way to get on his website to register your property, so you would receive an alert if somebody was attempting to file some change to the title on your home. But I want to just mention that the veteran ID card system works. I went down, I just started the beginning of September, and I went down a couple weeks ago, and it took about 45 minutes, and primarily because there was so much interest there, a lot of folks waiting to do it. And I walked out with this card, and as I'd mentioned to you in our work session earlier, it was neat to see large group of veterans there that really put value in this card and what it means and all that. So I want to just publicly mention that and thank Brandon, our recorder, for putting together this program. So
It's a neat idea.
that's all I have.
All right, then at this time, we will go to council comments, and Councilmember Epley.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no comments tonight.
All right, Councilmember Hilton,
No comments tonight, Your Honor.
Councilmember Stevens.
None this evening, Your Honor.
Wow, Vice Mayor Byington.
None for me either.
I, as your mayor, have a comment.
Shocking.
First, I want to welcome the ladies out here who I guess you're getting some kind of high school credit, is that correct? And you picked a great meeting to come to because it's going to be done in record time.
That's right.
We should have come to the one that went till 2 a.m. That would have been a really exciting event for you. But I had the opportunity to represent the city in two events last month. Well, one was last month and one was this month. Dayton history is now part of the National Park Service as it relates to the Wright Brothers exhibit there. And they had a grand opening and ribbon cutting for that facility. The plane that we have is the original 1905 Wright B Flyer. And that's the plane, even though in 1903 is when Wilbur and Orville, had the flight in Kitty Hawk. They said the 1905 plane is where they really learned how to fly, and were able to actually control the machine that was powered flight. And it's incredible exhibits there, and I would recommend. It's a great place to go visit. There's all sorts of really educational things there, and a lot about the history of Dayton. But that was something that was a neat idea. They've been working with Congressman Turner for close to 8 to 10 years to get this National Park Service designation, and he said a few words about how difficult it is to get anything done in Washington. I mean, you can't even get a National Park Service designation nowadays. But and then the second event that I was able to attend was at the Air Force Museum, and that was they were having a black tie event celebrating the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I, as well as the 71st anniversary of the creation of the Department of the Air Force. Prior to that, the Air Force was part of the Army Air Corps, and they created a separate branch of service for the United States Air Force. And one of the interesting things they had there, they showed some videos about World War I and had some still photos and some other issues, but they had the liaison from the United Kingdom here to give a talk about how we went to Europe in 1918, and we had our first squadrons of airplanes there. They were all the bi wings. Interesting, when airplanes first started getting involved in World War I, they did not have any armaments on them, and so they were used primarily for just surveying the fields and pointing out and telling everybody where all the troops were on each side of the battlefield and what their formations were looking like. Then somebody got the bright idea that the pilot said, well, I'm going to take one of my pistols up there, and so that what they'd do is they'd get up there and fly around. If they engaged another enemy aircraft, they'd get their revolvers out and shoot 6 rounds at each other, and they always missed. And so after they were done and shot up all their ammunition, they would then salute each other and then go back to the camp. And then somebody got the idea of, well, why don't we put a machine gun on the top of this airplane? And then that's how the dogfight started, and the rest is Air Force history. So that was an interesting event, and I was happy to represent the city on that. So this will now conclude our meeting for September 17th. Our next meeting is coming up quickly. It's on Monday, October 1st, 2018, and this meeting is adjourned.